Well, we are so excited to have Roderick Hill on the pod. Rod has a BFA from the Juilliard School. He's been in movies like King Kelly, Kinsey, Run All Night on your TV screens in Louis, The Chappelle Show with the other Charlie Murphy, The Newsroom, Madam Secretary, The Good Wife. He's been on Broadway in Butley and Elton John's Lestat, all over the off-Broadway and regional scene. And he's been in over 30 national commercials, which we're going to talk about. It almost certainly means you've seen Rod on your TV screen if you watch sports of any kind. Most recently, there was a Verizon commercial with Tony Hale where Rod was giving you some trademark everyman style acting. He also directs. He does voiceovers for projects like Grand Theft Auto. He's also my friend and longtime sports companion, including multiple sport intramural championships from our early days of basketball to these back-to-back Downtown or Broadway Show League championships to this day. Rod, first off, welcome on the pod. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
This
Now,
is the first time you and I have seen each other without like a hat on in a long time.
we're in much less athletic clothing than they're wearing. I'm going to say in general, from a podcast perspective, I've been trying to cut down these bios since nobody needs to hear me do 2 minutes of someone's credits, as beautiful as it is to listen to my voice. But I really want to take a step back in this case and cover a bit of breadth with your bio because I really want to use that as a framing device for this whole conversation. I want to throw out two things that I think are true, and I hope this is not offensive to you that I'm saying it. The first of which, the vast majority of our listeners will have never heard of you before. Like maybe your mom will listen
True.
to and they've sort of heard of some people, Gavin Creel and Jesse Mueller. There'll be people they've heard of who are on this podcast. You will not be one of those people, other than if your mom listens or whatever. But
Right.
two, I want to compliment sandwich you or give you an open face sandwich, which is you are a radically successful actor. Like it is very difficult to be as successful and thriving of an artist as you are. So we're going to dive deeper into your career and different concepts here, but I just want to highlight that as a framing device as we go through the journey of something that is really true of you and not necessarily unique to you, but certainly something, you know, I think that it's interesting to think about like how much you've done, all the different things you've done, and not be a household name. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. But first off, let me take you back. I'm gonna take you all the way back to your college journey. If even before we get to college, can you? I want to give you 60 seconds to give me the bio getting you up to 17. So what's Rod 1 through 17 in 60 seconds?
I played sports like nonstop. I always,
So
I
good.
acted, did stuff, and but I never really thought of it as a career. And I was going to go to college playing baseball,
Yep.
and then I messed my arm up and was like, "Huh, I'm not really gonna." I didn't love the culture around it, and so I decided to go to this arts camp called Interlochen for the
Yep.
summer, and then that changed my life. And
Okay. So pick me up from Interlaken, and now we can do the slightly slower down version of like, do you remember that experience of like looking at colleges, right? So like thinking about what your college list was like. Were you thinking at that point, hey, I'm going Conservatory of Bus? Did you look at more liberal arts programs? What was that like for you as you were investigating?
Yeah, I mean, initially just had been looking at colleges with baseball programs, when I was younger in school, and then once I went to Interlochen and I knew I wasn't going to pitch anymore, I didn't really
And
know
you
a
didn't look
lot.
at Juilliard as like a professional sports school. You didn't think that might be on your list.
I was a starting quarterback on the football team there, but
Yeah.
I didn't. But I didn't know what Juilliard was. I'd never heard of it until
Hmm.
I got to Interlochen. And this is, I mean, I kind of hate telling this story because it sounds, uh, so awful but I was pretty clueless about like it was a new career for me. My mom was in theater like locally in
Hmm.
Indianapolis, but so I grew up around some of that thing, but I didn't know anything outside of that scene really. So
Yep.
I basically just relied on other students at Interlochen to see where they were auditioning, and someone was like, "You should audition for Juilliard," and I was
Yep.
like, "What's Juilliard?"
Uh-huh. And you're
And
just
that's
piggybacking their list. You're getting
yeah.
monologues from Interlaken. You're figuring it out. Was it all acting schools as opposed to like? Did you look at any musical theater? Or was it always acting for you?
No, it was always acting. Yeah, I wasn't. And I did sing, and I've done musicals, but I wasn't. That wasn't my main focus. Um, I looked at a lot of schools too. The University of Evansville in Indiana had a good
Hmm.
program, and I looked at a lot of places. I think I started to focus down mostly on conservatories
Yep.
because I knew it was what I wanted to do and what I wanted to
Yeah.
specify in.
And
So
what was that vision of yourself? I want to talk a little bit, especially because that's the framing I'm talking about, sort of the breadth of the career you end up having.
yeah.
Do you remember when you're 17? Like, what did you see yourself doing as you're like, Like, were you thinking I'm gonna be on a TV show? Were you thinking I'm gonna be in a Broadway play? Were you thinking like, what was the thing that you're like, "I'm hoping I get this out of
Shakespeare.
an acting career"? Shakespeare, okay. At
I just
17,
wanted
Shakespeare.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Well,
was pretty much like I thought, I thought maybe if I could start my own like Shakespeare company, like something
mhm.
like that would be what I wanted to do at that time. I was wildly influenced by Kenneth Branagh and
Uh-huh.
his beginning stuff. It was a big,
For anyone watching the YouTube, you're still giving me this look. You're giving me mostly a Kenneth Branagh look right now with
yeah, yeah,
the
it's
in
I
your hair,
based
yeah.
my entire look off of him, my
Yep,
life.
yep.
Um, but yeah, I think that was the main thing. I didn't I I loved movies. I didn't get into film until later, like into mostly I
Uh-huh.
was at Juilliard. So theater was what I wanted to do, and I just really loved classical text, and so that was my. I didn't envision a career. I just didn't know. I didn't have any examples. I didn't
Yep.
know what was possible. So I didn't, where my career, what it became. I didn't. I could never have foreseen that. So.
And where are your parents in all this in terms of, you mentioned your mom being into community theater or local
Mhm.
theater. Was she like, "Oh, yes, Juilliard, that sounds great." Like, what was this? Did it take some convincing? Like, what did that journey look like for you?
No, they were fully supportive. I mean, I
Mhm.
had always had full support from them in pretty much whatever I was passionate about and chose. They really encouraged me to follow my passions and to really explore art and things like that. My dad was a doctor, and he was fully supportive of that as well. And
Mm.
yeah, they were thrilled about Juilliard. So
Go Hills. I love it.
yeah, I was very
Okay.
lucky in terms of that.
Tell me a little bit. We've had a couple examples of the Juilliard journey. In fact, literally our last guest, Calvin Smith, also was a Juilliard grad.
Uh-huh.
But so I don't want to go too deep into what it is, and because we certainly know that. But give me a little bit of your experience, and maybe especially like, again, if we're holding on to that expectations framing of what you were picturing yourself 18, you think you're starting a Shakespeare company, and then like through the experience of school, did you squeeze what you wanted out of it? And how did that maybe then alter expectations as we get you up to like 21, 22 and looking at graduating?
Yeah. I think I went in with a very open mind, like really not knowing what to expect, but knowing that I wanted to really work
Hmm.
rigorously and really learn as much as I could. So I tried to absorb as much as possible there, and I tried lots of different things. Some things I wasn't good at, and some things I was. And then I slowly started to find, like, you start to find your technique there, your own technique
Hmm.
there, like not some necessarily. A Juilliard technique or any sort of acting technique. You find kind of develop. They give you all the tools from a lot of things to develop your own, and so you really try to. I really just tried to be like, okay, how am I going to turn this into how I work
Yeah.
a craft, right? So, and then that definitely changed how I started to view things when I got out. Um, I went, one of the great things about Juilliard being in New York City and their school's connections is that we got lots of tickets to shows. So I got
Hmm.
to see a lot of theater, and I started watching, noticing the performances I liked, what I didn't like, the Juilliard actors who I knew who graduated, who I found, who I liked and who I didn't like, and who,
Hmm.
they were all great, but things I learned by watching them. And that's how I really honed in on things there.
You're giving me an image of like you as a farm boy from the middle of the country and played sports or whatever. Like, was there a lot of like culture shock coming to New York City where you're like, and maybe especially like culture shock of like not only coming to New York City, but coming to a Juilliard where there are some 18-year-olds with you, but there's some like fully grown adults and they have
Yep.
their lives and they know what they're doing. They have bank accounts and you're like, I'm 18. Like, I imagine that some of that was not easy moving to New York City and sort of
I
trying to figure that out.
I think having gone to Interlaken, for my last year of high school, so
Hmm.
I'd been away from home for a year at the academy there, so that helped.
Yep.
But I think two things were simultaneous. I knew New York City the second I stepped foot here was my home and was
Uh-huh.
going to be my home for the rest of my life. Like, I loved it immediately, and also I was just a country boy. I
Yeah.
mean, I was kind of a hick from Indiana, like,
Yep.
who was smart and educated and read, but I was like very clueless about the world.
Yep.
And I loved it. I mean, I felt like back then, certainly New York City really welcomed me with open arms, and I welcomed it back. So,
Yep.
but it was a shock. And I think in school, a lot of the kids a lot of those students that were 18 or younger were, from LA or from New York or
Right.
Miami. So they were from big cities. There were a couple of us from small towns. And then the other students, there were only, I think, 5 or 6 of us out of high school, and the rest had all been to college already. So
Yep.
there was a big difference in that initially, but that fades quickly once you all start working together. So
Totally. No, I can only imagine. I mean, I had a little bit of that coming from Pittsburgh of like, it's like some
right,
step in between, but like, the first couple experiences of New York City theater and being like, is this theater? Is this what it is? Oh my God. Okay. That's
yeah.
possible. And that's possible. And then I can only imagine that, if you're like, I haven't been seeing that at the
I
stuff your
think
mom
in
would do.
terms of seeing shows, I was just like, I mean, I just remember like, yeah, my mind being blown, being like,
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do this with theater. I didn't know you could do this in a theater. I didn't
Right.
know you could do
That
this
this
in a
could be in the
space.
container of what theater is, could
Yeah,
have
and
this.
also just seeing like the other students at Juilliard, like they were so good. So many of them, I was just like, oh man, I can't believe like how interesting some of these people are.
Uh-huh.
Like it was great. It was
Yeah.
great.
Okay, we're going to take a very short break, run a couple ads, and we're going to come back and talk about you graduating from school. So, back in a flash.
All right.
Okay, we are back with the great Roderick Hill. We're going to hone it. He's great. It's funny, right? Okay, we're back with the mediocre Roderick Hill.
No, it's okay.
Uh, you'll take great?
I'll take great. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, good.
Mediocrely
Um,
great. Yeah.
Mediocrely great, pretty great at being mediocre. Let's hone in on you at 22, graduating from school. So,
Yeah.
I would love to hear about your showcase experience. Getting an agent, getting maybe multiple agents, different representation, but also, again, I want to just check back in with that framing device of like, what is that mindset now in terms of the career? Now you've graduated from Juilliard, you have all this training, you see maybe some more possible avenues. What was the career then 22-year-old Rod thought he was going to have? Like, do you remember what that was like? I imagine some of which is like, now you've seen classmates who, I guess Adam Driver's younger than you, but the people who are
Yeah.
like that, where you're like, oh my God, that's in the realm of possibility. And oof, like what did that start looking like at 22?
Yeah. I didn't again, I don't not a whole lot changed in terms of how I saw my career going or what I thought it was going to be
Uh-huh.
between say 17 and 22. Like I literally before I graduated, I had an offer to do a show, which was Shakespeare at Shakespeare and Company in Massachusetts.
Right on target. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I thought I was going to continue to do, and
Yep.
I did do a lot of Shakespeare for my first few years out of school.
Yep.
My showcase was, uh, I had a lot of big agencies that were interested. I had some, and I decided not to go with them.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I think at the time, they probably would have swallowed me whole.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know enough about the business at that time to be able to handle that, and I
Yeah, talk me
certainly
through that
didn't.
decision a little more. Who helped you, or how did you come to the decision? Because I think that's a really interesting, and I don't know that a lot of 17-year-old listeners, for our high school listeners at least, I don't know that they would necessarily understand. Like, why would you not go with the biggest agency that can get you the most access? And like, what was the decision making process of I'd be swallowed whole at those places?
Uh, I mean, I'm not sure it was the best decision. I mean, I guess it was because I made it, but I think in retrospect, if I had been a little bit savvier, I may have been able to navigate that. But for somebody who wanted to bounce to Shakespeare and Company and work with Kristen
Right.
Linklater and Tina Packer, I that wasn't going to fly at William Morris. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like
Yep.
they weren't going to sit around while I did Shakespeare for 3 or 4 years. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So that's what I'd wanted to do. Um, I think that at that time at 22, I didn't have a good understanding of the economics of the business,
Uh-huh.
and certainly the city, New York City, and the business was in a very different shape than it was then.
Yep.
Or that is was different then than it is now.
Yep.
So I think I had certainly at that time my rent was very very low, and I going to do Shakespeare somewhere, I was like, oh, I'm getting paid a lot of money, this
It's
is
great.
great.
And they'll put me up
So
too. It's
yeah,
fantastic. I'll
exactly. They
sublet.
gave
Yeah.
me a car and
Yep.
so that was, I think, the biggest difference. But so I went with an agent that a casting director recommended to
Uh-huh.
me, and they had seen me and they really liked me, and I formed a very close relationship with that agent.
Yep. And it was
His name was
about a
Bill.
more aligned vision with the two. That, hey, this person is excited about me doing Shakespeare, and they do feel like they're going to care about me in a
He
different way than William Morris is going to.
Yeah, Bill. Bill was the agency, but my agent I worked with, he was very nurturing and was
Hmm.
the perfect person to teach me about how
Yep.
things in the business worked.
And were
Because I
you?
just didn't really get a good, I didn't really get a good glimpse of that at Juilliard. Really,
Yep.
I didn't. There was a lot I didn't know about that,
Yep.
and I guess some people do. Some kids got out and really
Cool.
grasped it. I didn't.
Yep.
I didn't. So I needed to be guided a little bit early on, and so I needed somebody who was willing to take the time and the patience to teach me how, to get me feedback on auditions, to,
Yep.
talk to me about how my process was going, things like that.
I think it's something that, so many schools, so many artists talk about, oh, they wish their school trained them better at the business of the business stuff, right?
Yeah.
Certainly something schools have gotten better at in terms of they do more of it. But it's also like, in the analogy of like you are a CEO of your own company, it's like those are
Yeah.
also are different departments. Like if you're spending 4 years really training the artist in you, it's like that is it's a whole different skill set of like the business person in you. It's like that would be, it's like one side's operations and one side's marketing. It's like there is the side of like I'm working on myself as an artist. Did you It takes some time. Some people are better at one and then the other, but there's nothing wrong. I think sometimes people are like, I wish I'd known everything when I graduated. I'm like, but if you spent 3 years studying that, then did you work on your craft as much? Like,
Yeah.
there's some choices you have to make in either
I mean,
direction.
I definitely made the choice to work on my craft and not think about what was coming next.
Right.
I didn't think about after school a lot. And then all of a sudden I got to the end of my fourth year at Juilliard and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I've got to figure out this agent
Yeah.
thing.
Oh. Yeah.
You know. So
And so you're not graduate. And I want to talk a little bit about different agents too. At the time, did
yeah.
you sign with also a commercial agent or just a legit agent to start?
No, I had a commercial agent and I still am with the same commercial agent I signed with out of school.
Heck yeah. Well,
So
you guys are doing well together. We'll get into that. But
yes,
did
she
you
has
also
been
think
amazing.
about manager? Did you think about, or was it just agents for
Back
the
then, no. Back then, nobody had managers.
uh-huh. Well, this
Uh,
is like 50 years ago when you're graduating. Rod looks
yeah.
great, but he's in his 70s. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's obvious
The
to you.
management thing was just starting. Like
Uh-huh.
the management thing was just starting. So I had a couple of managers I remember contacting me, but I was like, what? I have no
Why would I pay you
career to
more?
manage. What do I
Yeah.
need like
Totally.
what do I need
Yeah.
a manager for? So I didn't do a manager until years later.
And it sounds like maybe your agent functioned a little bit the way sometimes managers do in
Yes. It
terms
was a
of
smaller
wanting to
boutique
handle it.
agency, and so they
Yeah.
were a little more hands-on, which is what I needed. So
Okay, well, now let's get into, and you tell me exactly when this starts happening for you. Post Shakespeare, you're still doing Shakespeare, and I know it's something that you continue to do. But I'm saying at the point that you start spreading out, because when I read that long bio, part of it was to go,
mhm.
whoa, like it really is like six different careers. I mean, it's one career, you lace it all together, and makes your own. But we even talked about, okay, there's different agents, and we'll get into that when we get into commercials in a bit here.
Mhm.
But like, when did you start the spreading of yourself beyond just I'm focused on doing Shakespeare, which is what I trained to do? When did that spread start to trickle in, and how did it happen? Was that a conscious decision of my rent's going up, or what made you go, I think I want to start doing some of these other paths as well?
It wasn't uh it wasn't initially a financial decision. I can't remember the specific thing that happened, but I got in front of a camera for the first time. I did my first like film or TV job. I think it was Kinsey maybe.
Uh-huh.
And I fell in love with it.
Yep.
I didn't expect to like it. Like I was a theater guy. Like I loved theater and and I was making a living doing
Yep.
theater. But then I really fell in love with the art of filmmaking
Yep.
and how to tell a story that way and how I could still do what I wanted and tell the stories I wanted to tell and have an interesting craft in front of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
So and that transitioned to TV and to also um, commercial. So,
Yep.
and I think the thing that we can get into that when we talk about commercial stuff, but the thing that I think made me successful initially at commercial is that I didn't treat it any differently than doing a
Uh-huh.
film, a TV, or a play.
Uh-huh.
So,
I love that.
back,
Did you feel like in terms of the way that you're making connections? I know that of course there's some overlap between all these different things to some extent, to some lesser and some more in terms of TV and film overlap for sure. Some of that could be the same casting people as theater sometimes, but I guess how are you thinking about like as you're now, I don't know, you're 27, you're 30, you're going, okay, this is the career I think I'm starting to have. How are you sort of thinking about navigating those different connections? Because you're going to do multiple Broadway plays, more off Broadway, more
yep.
regional stuff. You're going to do now many movies, many TV shows. Like how is all that happening in terms of sequentially and where you're putting your focus and of your business, or as you're thinking about
I
that?
started initially, I was out of town a lot because I was doing regional theater when I first started. So I wasn't in New York. And then I started doing off Broadway. And actually, the first off Broadway show I had done at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And then it
Uh-huh.
came over to America with Theater for No Audience. And
Yep.
uh, this casting director, Susan Shopmaker, saw me in that show and brought me in for my first movie.
Yep.
And I've had a long relationship with her over the years, and then so she saw me in that, and then someone
Yep.
else sees you in another thing, and that's how they start connecting. And then, you know, my entryway into musicals, I did musical at New York Stage and Film called Nerds, which was about the beginning of the computer software industry. And I played Bill
Mm-hmm.
Gates in the first thing of that. And it was really the first, I had sung at Juilliard, but it was the first musical I did. But it was my agent that I talked about earlier who had pushed me. He loved musical theater, and he
Uh-huh.
was like, you have a good voice. You can do this. You're a really strong actor. And so that's how I ended up in Lestat and all of that stuff.
Yep.
So,
Well, and again, talking about the economics of it, that is where more of the money is going to be.
yeah,
There's more money in musicals than there is in Shakespeare in general, in terms of
absolutely.
just what's out there. Yeah. Was
Absolutely.
there any part of the business that you feel like Juilliard didn't prep you for? So I guess partially the business stuff we talked about too, but also just in terms of like technique wise. And again, I don't mean to keep teasing commercials coming of
Mhm.
some of the different techniques of commercials, but TV and film, like when you got in front of a camera, were you like, oh, this is basically the training I had at Juilliard, I'm doing the same thing? Or did you feel like I'm really modulating what I'm doing? There's a whole new sort of technique I need to learn.
At the time when I was at Juilliard, we didn't get any camera training technique at all, so
Yeah.
we didn't know anything about that. So really, what I felt like a pretty at sea in my first couple jobs. So what I did was I asked a lot of questions.
Hmm.
At that time,
On set, this is like of the directors.
of the cinematographers,
Yeah.
of the DPs. I worked with a lot of really good DPs, especially in commercials. And so when I was doing commercials, I was just picking their brains.
Yeah.
When I could, when it was appropriate, and
Yep.
when they weren't busy, but just to be like, hey. Is my eye line here working? This is what I'm
Uh-huh.
trying to communicate. And they're like, no, actually, you're crossing the frame here. You need to dip your eyes down and go back to
Uh-huh.
the other side here. Like just little things that they taught me. And that's how I learned. But
Yep.
then you start to piece together. But acting is acting, and our jobs as actors is to tell the truth. And that's the same whether you're on stage, whether you're in a
Yep.
musical, whether you're in a commercial, or whether you're on in a movie.
Yep.
So that's really what. And then I started to see all of the things that I learned at Juilliard that really helped me with my camera technique.
Uh-huh.
So, but I had to piece that together for myself. Like I had to learn that myself. And I
Yep.
realized I would see how, oh, that movement class has really allowed me to bring a physical energy to this that could
Uh-huh.
still be expressed through my eyes.
Yeah. In
But
stillness.
but
Yeah.
but because there's still an energy in the body
Yeah.
that's being communicated through the eyes. So even if the camera's like right here, I'm using this thing from a movement class in my second year of Juilliard. That's really and you start to see how you start to put those things together.
Yep.
But that just takes experience. That's just
Yep.
the doing of it.
Yep. Did you do any post school like continuing education stuff? Did you do any like, whether pay to pay classes or pay to play class, I mean, in terms of casting
Yeah.
directors and that kind of stuff? Did you do any on camera, people do Bob Krakow or whatever? Did you do those kind of like, hey, I want to actually invest in this? Did you do any musical theater? I'm gonna take some voice lessons. Like, was there any of that kind
Oh
of
yeah,
addition?
I definitely took voice lessons.
Hmm.
I definitely, when I knew I was gonna, I was auditioning for musicals. I was like, well, you can't just go in there and wing it. Like, I got to get some more vocal training. So I definitely took voice lessons. I didn't take. I did. I worked with a couple. I never took any classes for on camera, but I did work with a
Hmm.
couple of coaches occasionally.
Hmm.
We're good, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
What did that look like in terms of working with coaches? I know it's something Elizabeth still does. She was doing it this morning. She was working with a coach on
yeah.
it was a really weird TV audition. I was like, I think this is funny, but maybe it's creepy. I'm not sure. It's like the tone of this is so weird. And it's like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna contact someone to work on this. Like what did that look like in terms of your experience of working with like on camera coaches?
That was mostly those times were mostly specific auditions that I, had a callback for that I really needed to nail, and they were good. They gave me some good techniques.
Yep.
I didn't nothing. Um, yeah, I think getting feedback, whether it's from a friend, a coworker, somebody you trust, or a
Yep.
coach, is really important, right? And
Yep.
actors knowing how to take feedback, receive it, but also seeking out that feedback about your work is really important.
I think it's really smart. And it's something we talked about with Calvin a little bit in our last artist episode. We were talking about sort of how you develop that feedback rubric for yourself. Partially because I think so often it can't be from the casting people in the room. The feedback you get often is not about your work. It's like,
No,
no, we wanted someone taller, we wanted
yeah,
someone
yeah,
skinnier, we wanted something. You're like, oh, okay, well, tough to do that tomorrow.
yeah.
But that, like, in terms of your own performance, like it can be helpful, maybe having an outside eye or having some process of someone to get that feedback from. Okay, let's take one more short break, and then we're finally going to get into commercials. We've started dipping our toe into it, but I want to dive a little deeper into it. So we'll be right back. Okay, We're back with Roderick Hill, all superlatives removed. I want to return to that framing a little because I think it may be a little bit helpful for our parent listeners, especially. As you're now getting into your 50s now, 60s, I don't know what the right as we're getting old. No, but as you're really
I'm
establishing,
close. I'm close.
a number of years in this business, right? Like,
Yeah.
I do think parents a lot of our listeners are parents of high school students, college students, some right out of college. So let's say,
Hmm.
most of our listeners 16 to 25-ish is probably the biggest range. And then a lot of their parents. I think it's really hard to picture a version of like a middle class actor of like what that even is. I mean, I think it's honestly it's been squeezed a little bit. It's pretty difficult to be a middle class actor today in the way that like we can picture a successful movie star. We can picture Adam Driver. We know what that
Yeah.
is. We can picture a struggling waiter who that's all they have to do to pay the bills and figure that out. But I think sort of seeing somebody who's able to go, they've really carved a career out for themselves in a way. I think is really hard. I mean, I've told the story on the pod before, but I have such a distinct memory of like doing an initial consultation, meaning meeting a new client coming into my at the time gorgeous but very small one-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side, and watching the mom be kind of like, "Oh, okay, this isn't so bad. Like I could see you. So like you've done a lot of Shakespeare and you do this. This is workable." And I want to be like, "Do you think I bought this $500,000 apartment from doing Shakespeare? Like that's not. It's because I run a
Right.
teaching company. Like of course it's because I have to do other things like that. I'm like it's also I'm successful and happy and all those things, but it was this is a difficult process to sort of see how do you get from these jobs to some version of making life yourself. Okay, so it's a long preamble to say all that, but sort of I'd love to hear before we dive into the like specifics of just commercials, like what has that piecing together looked like from you with TV jobs? When we talk about the economics of with TV jobs, with I'm sure there were some at times waiting tables, or you can tell me if no, but or different things like that. How did you piece together like, hey, I'm looking at a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn. How did that all work for you? How did you make a life for yourself, sort of economically?
Uh, uh, Shoot, what I want. I really love what you say about that because I kind of wear it now as a badge of honor. The idea of a middle class actor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I think of myself as like a working class journeyman actor
Mm-hmm.
who's. It is very difficult to do now.
It's a rare
It
breed,
has
for
it
sure.
has become more difficult even for me to do it, and I have an established career at doing it, but it's getting harder.
Yep.
Um, so I- and do I look back and like there were job opportunities, things that I may have turned down that became big that I was like, oh, that was my chance at stardom and stuff like that. I didn't get out of school and think about being a star. And I think some
Mm-hmm.
people do. Some people really wanted to do that. I just wanted to act in as
Yep.
many ways as I could. I loved the craft. I loved the work, and I just wanted to do it wherever, whenever I could. And some of those jobs have been big, and some of them have been small. And there are no small jobs. Like it's just not how it works. So I really prided myself on trying to, but you have to piece it together. And there is, I would love to say there was like some long-term plan. There wasn't. I just
Mm-hmm.
went from, one job to another to another. And I have, when I first got out of school, I bartended a bit,
Uh-huh.
did some bartending, but I have been pretty lucky to make the majority. I mean, most of my years I've made my living acting and have
Yep.
not had to supplement with a lot of stuff. So
And is there a strategy to like? I know some people talk about like, hey, I really try to like in the what's the opposite of lean in the good times, really try to live below my means, knowing because I just imagine. Again, we'll talk about some of the finances of commercials, or maybe we
mhm.
can get into it. Like sometimes you do a national commercial and it's a big chunk of money all at once. I know sometimes there's going to be residuals coming. Like but it's not something where at the beginning of the year I'm going to make X amount of dollars, right? Like
Never.
it's going to be variable. Like so, how do you like plan for that? Again, I see a beautiful apartment that you're living in, that and a life
Yeah.
that you've created, and I've gotten to be beside that for 2 decades now or whatever. Like, but like how does one? I guess how does one figure that out? If I'm a parent with a business degree and I'm like, how do you do that? How do you know? Isn't that scary? Like, what is that? What's the strategy there to sort of succeed?
Uh, it, it is scary. It is scary. Some years, some years, my income can fluctuate $100,000 in a year.
That's crazy. I mean, that's a crazy thing to say. That's all I'm saying is that like I'm
Yeah,
like that's very few people. Is that true? Where it can vary
yeah.
$100,000 in a year?
So that's crazy. So you have to really learn how to manage cash flow well.
Yep.
which I'm not always successful at. There are like the Entertainment Community Fund. Uh, it was an organization for professionals, and they teach some great finance classes
Uh-huh.
for actors and artists and things like that. And so I've taken those and learned how to balance that. But yeah, it's scary. Like
Yep.
you don't. You've heard this before. I think people would say this all the time. If there is something else that you feel like you can do, you should do it. Like, because the to really dive into this business is scary. You got to want to live like
Hmm.
that. You got to really want to take those risks. It's a risk to be like, okay, I don't know. And yeah, you do have to supplement it with other things at times,
Yep.
like bartending, teaching, whatever it is, you piece that together. Now,
Yep.
for me, that's, a voiceover here or a commercial so that I know I've got this play I'm going to do in the spring. You know what I mean? So if I can
Yep.
somehow focus on doing some commercial work before that so that I can afford to do that play.
Yep.
So it's a balancing act. I will
Yep.
say that.
Okay, I love it. Now let's get into some of those commercials. So, can we just talk about sort of? And I love that you said your approach is so similar from commercials to
Hmm.
TV and film. I love that. But just from like imagining, haven't had a really detailed conversation about commercials. One of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the pod. Imagining, I'm someone who doesn't really understand the different aspects of the business. What does make a commercial audition, let's say, different than like a legit audition? If you're walking in for a play and auditioning, you're walking for TV and film versus you're walking for a commercial, how's that going to look different than it would, yeah, for one of those other projects?
Uh, I would say it's not always the same. There's so different types of commercials, right? For me, what kind of my niche has been, what I did, I do a lot more improving in commercials than I
Yeah.
do in a TV or film audition normally. Usually that
Yep.
script is pretty set, and at least the types of commercials I do, I think I'm asked to improv and rewrite
Yep.
things. So that's one big difference. And in terms of the audition process is like you go, if you're doing it in person, right? You go in and you're gonna audition. Probably you're gonna be in the room with another person. If it's a group,
Hmm.
like three people in the spot, you're gonna all audition together. Usually you don't do that in film
It's
and
like
TV.
jumping to a
So
chemistry read or something. It's
yeah,
jumping to the end of the
exactly.
process. Yeah.
Exactly. So you'll do that in there. And then in the callback, you'll be with the director. Either they'll be over Zoom or they'll be in the room, and they're gonna throw, and there'll be the ad agency people and a lot of stuff, a lot of people in the room, and they're gonna make their choices based on not always how your talent is and how good
Yep.
you are, but on like, oh, actually, the owner of the company's daughter is dating a blonde guy and he doesn't want any blonde guys in the
Right.
commercial.
You don't look enough
you
like Bill
know
Gates for this. Yeah. I
exactly.
mean, I just like think for people who, especially maybe if you're in a college right now, if you're in a BFA, you're looking at this world, especially if you love theater. Like for me, at least, that experience of I could not believe, like coming out of 4 years of training, like knowing how to like do plays and like work on sides. When
Hmm.
you would get a commercial audition, which had like one line or no lines, or there'd be like one line and it'd be like, but say whatever you want. I'm like, I,
Yeah.
I don't even say this one line that you've given me. That's not even, I don't even say those are the words. Like that is, I think it can be a little shocking to be like, so I walk in the room and just be and just talk, or
That's
like, how
well,
did you figure that out for you? I mean, I don't, do you do UCB stuff, or what made you be like, I kind of feel comfortable improving, or is that just natural to you?
it it was different back then. This style of commercial where you improv
Hmm.
happened in my time in the industry. So when I
Uh-huh.
first got to school, that wasn't what it was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like that. And then when The Office came out in America, things started to change, and they started to make some commercials. And me and a handful of people were some of the first people that were doing
Uh-huh.
with a couple of with these directors in the business where they were like trying to make these short films,
Uh-huh.
basically these short 30-second films. So they became funny, and these like funny short comedy films where we would improv in them. And that's
Yep.
a style that's new. That wasn't what it was when I first got out of school. Now it
Yep.
is. So I always tell people, when I'm teaching about commercials or something like that, I tell actors, I go to the audition. If you're going there, if it's not a self tape, if you're going there, go early, read the script, and I
Hmm.
spend at least 5 minutes just writing.
Yep.
Like in my head, just looking at the script and writing, just coming
Give,
up with some possibilities, other things that I could say, just to give myself a little like, and then I can change it in the room when I improv it based on what the other person does. But I've given myself some other options.
I think that is
Yeah.
so smart, and I think something that sometimes people would think, oh, but then it's not going to be legit. Is it not going to be real? Like I think sometimes people think of improv necessarily meaning off the cuff, and I do think, at least for me, sort of almost the definition of improv is like writing on your feet. And so if you're
Yes,
like,
that's what it
I've
is.
written a little bit, then it's like, it's just
Yeah.
helping you to be like, this is a smart thing that I've written. Like, and
It's
you
like
can choose
freestyle
between
hip
the
hop, and
options.
you know what I mean? It's like it can be
Absolutely.
stream of consciousness, but like at least I'm, like I'm
Like,
giving
but
myself
you
some
had a
sort of
little rhyme
structure in
option
my.
in there. You knew where you were headed
Yeah,
there by the end of that
yeah.
line. Yeah, yeah,
I've
for
got a
sure.
little I've got a little structure. At least I know I've got a little structure, so I'm
Yeah,
not like totally flailing. And then
yeah,
you have to be willing to let that structure go based on what the other person you're in the room with does
for
and
sure.
whatever. But
And you got to play. Yeah,
yeah,
that's so
but
interesting. Yeah,
I do want to say like one thing is that when I certainly when I got out of school or when I was in school, commercials were really frowned upon. Like
correct.
it
Yeah,
wasn't it was it was considered beneath
like
certain
almost
actors
dirty.
and
Like,
certain
well, you don't talk about
yeah.
it if you do it. Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case anymore. At least I
Mm-mm.
hope it's not the case. Maybe some people still feel that way. But when I got out of school, there were no celebrities doing commercials. They
Well, I know
turned their
it's
nose down at that.
the worst thing. Now
Now
they're all taking them.
now you can't. I mean, it's really hard to work in a commercial if you're not a celebrity.
Yeah,
So that's very that's changed a lot. And I think that also the style of commercials are much more like short films, like funny short comedy
yeah.
films now. And so that's different. One thing when I first got out of school though, I went in for this cast director who saved me. There's a reason I kind of blew this audition off, this commercial audition. I wasn't taking it very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And she stopped and she was like, "What are you doing?" She was like, "You went to Juilliard. Like you know how to make good choices. You know how to be specific. You should." She was like, "Why are you treating this like it's any less than anything else?"
Mm-hmm.
And I listened. I heard her,
Mm.
and I was like, "You're right." And I got specific. I booked that audition. I owe her tremendously for saying that to me. She could have just let me walk out the room, and I really
Absolutely.
appreciate her saying that. And I realized when I started to make these commercials and got on set, there was no difference between what I was doing, and it is where I learned camera technique. It is why I
Mm-hmm.
started booking more TV and film
Mm.
because I had experience in the camera. And I was like, so commercials, trained me in for everything I did.
That's
So,
such a
and
great story.
that's why I said I treat them all the same, whether it's a play, whether it's a commercial, whether it's a voiceover, it's all just, you
Right.
still got to make the choices and tell the truth.
It's
So,
same seriousness of purpose, same mission. It may be slightly
mhm.
different. Okay, this is a different process I'm going through, but you're saying it's not like, oh, this is this, and then this is the one I really work on, or whatever.
Yeah.
You giving the same thing. I love it. Do you want to give us a shout out of that person's name, the casting director's name?
Martine was I don't know if she's still in the business. I think she lives in Florida now, but she
Mm.
was French, a French cast director. She
Yeah,
was
Martine.
wonderful.
Not,
Martine was great.
not afraid
And
to tell us some real talk.
I really owe Martine a lot for saying that to me. So,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
Can we talk a little bit? So 30 commercials. I imagine some of that is just because, and it says 30 plus. I
I
don't know, it
mean,
could be more.
I
I
think
mean,
it's probably way more than that, but
yeah.
I can't. I can't. I think it's probably closer to. I mean, probably closer to 100 to be honest.
Okay,
But
no, 100, my
sorry,
gosh. Whatever it is, but
I've done.
we're talking about all these commercials. I mean, most people, most, actors, even actors who do commercials are not necessarily in that place where they're going, I'm talking about that many. It's like, oh, this is great. I
Right.
got a commercial. Can we talk about kind of how they stack onto other jobs? Right? Especially since, I think on a traditional resume, you're not listing, hey, look at
Right.
all these fancy commercials I've done. It's not
Yep.
like like one Broadway show can lead to another Broadway show in that way.
Yeah.
How does it work with commercials in terms of how did you get from 1 to 20 to now 100 or whatever it is?
It's the majority of them have been with the same handful of directors.
Mhm.
Uh,
Directors or casting directors? It's mostly the same
direct
director hires you? Yeah.
Both, but I mean, so the same cast directors brought me in for these directors, but I got in with a group of directors who worked at the same company, and and then I started, they became very big in the business, and they kept hiring.
Yeah.
They don't always get to choose. They may like me for something, and the ad agency may be like, no,
Sure.
we want someone shorter, or we want someone tall, something
Right.
like that.
They're
So they
bringing
don't
you
always
in.
get to do it, but they consistently bring you back, so you have
Yeah.
the opportunity. So I was in the room. So it was a group of directors that I worked with for years who kind of became big, and then people wanted to emulate those directors. So I got a lot of jobs because they were like, "Oh, this guy worked with that
Mhm.
director. I want to work with him now because he's
Uh-huh.
one of that director's guys." So
Uh-huh.
that's how it did. That's how I did. And that just happens because, in the first commercial I did with that director, one of those directors, we were in LA, and this old guy was a little older than me, was in the commercial with me, who had worked with this director a lot. And the guy leaned over to me and he goes, "Just follow his direction. If you just listen to everything he says, and he may give you a line reading, if you do it just like he says, you'll work for the next 20 years."
Hmm.
And he was right.
Wow.
Because I think sometimes actors think they want to do their own thing, and they want to
Right.
do they don't
That's a
they don't follow the
suggestion.
direction.
That line
Yeah,
reading is a suggestion.
exactly. They want, and that's not what that, that's not how it works. You have to be flexible. Some directors have different styles. Some directors will be like, yeah, play it your way. So like some director will be like,
Uh-huh.
I want you to say it like this because
Yep.
it's a commercial and they're result oriented. And, so it's not, the processes can be different. Your
Yep.
job is to be adaptable and to do it. And I didn't lose any of my sense of self or my sense of art by
Right.
doing it. And I have an apartment now because of it. You know what I mean?
Heck
Like,
yes. No, I think that's such a good point. I think sometimes people get a little twisted with something like a line reading. Like, if you think a line reading is bad technique from a director to give, that's on them. It's still your choice whether you want to be offended by it. Like, it doesn't have
right,
to be
sure, of
offensive
course,
from your perspective. You were like,
of course,
great, I can do that. I'm an actor. Like, what's wrong with
yeah,
you? Yeah. So well said. I'll bet some of this, and you can tell me this is not true because I push back if you're like, no, it's really all about technique. I'll bet some of your success comes from the quality also that you have so well, which is like you have down so well, which is like you're so good at like getting to know people. Like I just imagine on set, like people like Rod and they want to bring it back. It is, of course, you're talented and good too. But I bet some of it is like those directors liked you and wanted to hang
yeah,
out with you in the way that I'm like, I want to call Rod and play basketball again. Like there is your people in the world that you go, I just want to like see that person again. I have a good feeling when I leave that, not always easy to turn that on and off. But I imagine some of that was a conscious choice where you're like, I'm going to be a person who like is easy to be around. Is it true?
yeah. I mean, I think it's true. I like people, but I also I really like I like this business. I like all the aspects of this
Uh-huh.
business, and it's tough. But so when I go to set, I mean, I just feel so lucky to be there, and I also like every aspect of it. I'm not, I don't. I'm not just interested in the acting part. I want to I don't want to get in anybody's way on set, but
Right.
I'm always talking to the sound guys, everybody. I want to know what the
Yep.
equipment is. I want to know what the stuff is. If they've got time to talk to me, sometimes
Yep.
we're all busy. It's a big rush, so I don't push. But so those crews, like a lot of the crews in New York City, especially certainly the commercial crews, I know all of those guys. So when
Yes.
I go to set with people who are like, "How do you know everybody here?" I'm like, "Well, because I've talked to them, I've hung out with them,
Yeah.
I asked them about their families. I know, like, because I'm interested.
Yes.
I just like them. It's a
Uh,
community. It's a community, and
I
that's
was going to
why
say the same thing. You mentioned cinematographer, and I was like, I wonder if some of that genuine curiosity, it just makes someone go, oh, you're interested? I like that guy. And then, like, now your name is just in the room in a positive way, even if it's not like brought up in for casting purposes. But when that director brings you in, they're like, it seems like everybody liked Rod. He fit in well. He seems like our people. Like that, all those are. I'm a huge Survivor fan. It's all your social game. This is all part of your social game. It's part of
yeah.
the game. It really is. It's part of it.
It is part of the game. People like there's not a lot of. I mean, you hear stories about actors that have made it who are not nice on set
Hmm.
and I think it happens.
And we're going to
I
name some
don't.
of those people right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to
Okay.
start talking about them. This is great.
Okay.
I've worked with them, um, but so don't go through my IMDb and
Yeah.
start searching for actors now.
Beep. Yeah.
Um, but I, for the most part, man, who's got time for that? Nobody wants
Yeah.
to work with that. Like it's
There's too
about
many good
being.
people. Yeah.
There's too many good people, and it's too nice. It's like people want to work with people that are chill and
Yep.
like, yeah,
Yep.
it's different. It's different in commercial than like you're not getting so deep into something that you have to stay in character. Like
Right.
I've done movies like the movie I did King Kelly, like I it was an intense movie. I had to live in character on set. So like
Hmm.
there was a little bit of method stuff, but there's an agreement there when you make that choice every day. And I
Right.
wasn't ever uh you know cruel or mean to people
No, but you're not joking
to the
around.
crew or to thing. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
not like you're trying to you got to stay focused on the task
Yep.
at hand, and that's a more intense thing. So there it's different. But
Yep.
I'm still that movie as intense as I was in that. I'm that the cinematographer, the editor, the sound guy, the director. We're all
Yep.
still best friends. Like
Yep.
we see. I just saw two of them last night. Like, and
Yeah.
I made that movie 15 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so
That's so cool. One, I just want to make sure we're not ducking the. I sort of threw out there like what kind of pay we're talking about when we talk about the economics of commercials,
uh huh.
especially 100 plus. Like, can we talk about? I mean, I imagine pretty early on you were union, so I don't know in terms of union, non-union, how
Yeah.
much you did that was in the non-union, but like. Especially now, I mean, I know it's gotten worse. A lot of different pay for actors have gotten worse in different ways.
hmm
But like, what are we expecting when we're talking a national commercial versus something that's internet only versus all the different kind of options of things that could happen?
That's really difficult to answer because the landscape has changed so much. I never worked non-union. I've always been union, both
Mhm.
theater and film and TV. So I've never done any non-union work. I'm a really pro-union guy. I'm a big SAG-AFTRA guy. I think I'll be on or I'm working with the negotiating committee for the next commercial contract.
Uh-huh.
So I'm really It's hard to say. The numbers have decreased a lot.
Yep.
So like probably make a third less on a national commercial now than I did 10 years ago.
A third less, like in actual dollars. So it's like
Yeah.
half as much if you're counting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's say
Gotcha. Yeah.
let's say on a big national commercial, if I made, I don't know, let's say I made 80 grand on a commercial or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, I probably make, 20 to
Mm-hmm.
30 now.
Oh, you make a
So
third as much, not a third less. You're saying a third to two-thirds less.
two-thirds less. Yeah. Sorry.
Oof, oof,
Yeah.
Rod, you're
Yeah.
killing me. You're
Yeah,
killing me.
it's really gotten down. Now, I mean,
Yeah,
somebody in the union might tell me, they like to tell me that I'm wrong when I say these numbers, but if I'm talking about the actual scratch in my check, we're making a
yeah.
lot less. Now, a lot of stuff made for new media that's made for internet and things like that, we're getting paid more for that than we are.
Uh huh.
I'm a big proponent of like, you know, they can track these views. Like, how many people are going to view this podcast, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not like the ad agencies
3 million people. Yep.
right. And it's
Hmm.
not like the ad agencies don't know how many times it's seen. So like I did a TD Bank spot that ran on TV a lot, but had the most impressions. Most people noticed me from it from on their Instagram feeds.
Uh huh.
And it had the more impressions on that. So I'm a big proponent of we need to get paid for views. I
Uh
don't care
huh.
where those views are. If they're on a television, if they're on an Instagram, wherever they are, we need to get paid for eyes on it. Like,
Yep.
right? It's about the exposure because also we're not allowed to work competing products. If,
Yes.
so I can't work a Chase Bank spot while I've got a TD Bank spot.
Yep.
So, um, so we need to be paid for something that's giving you that exposure.
Well, can you
So
talk a little bit of how that works? I'd had that question a little earlier, just like how work begets work, but also sometimes work stops other work. What does
yeah,
that work look like in terms of conflict of like if I'm doing one thing on different mediums, and especially now with more things that are crossing different media? How
right.
does that work in terms of what you're not allowed to do while something's happening?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, there's lots of levels of it, but like you can do an internet commercial, and they could not have what's called exclusivity. So like,
Hmm.
um, I have a native commercial now that's running that's for like the holiday time that they wanted to keep us from doing another native, so they had to pay for exclusivity. So
Uh-huh.
for that, because it was online, if it's on a network spot, like if it's running on TV, then you have exclusivity. So
Yep.
if it's on TV, you can't do a competing product. I
Right.
could probably do it. You could do it like an industrial or something like that. For if let's say I have a Ford commercial on TV and Infinity wants me to do
Right.
an industrial, I could do that, but I wouldn't be able to do an Infinity commercial for on camera.
And
So
competing
it
products
does.
basically means like you did that Verizon commercial. Now it just means nothing else for a phone company, but you could do something for Coke or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. You just
Yeah.
can't do a competing product. And sometimes, there's gray areas a lot now in those. So like, we had a big battle with the Verizon thing because I'm also selling an iPhone in that commercial. So
Uh huh.
can I do an iPhone? Am I allowed to do a Samsung commercial?
And can
Or
you?
I could have.
Oh, you're
But
like I
it's
didn't
tricky
book one,
because
but
if the cast directors know that you're have a Verizon spot that's
uh
holding
huh.
an iPhone, they might not bring you in for that Samsung
Uh huh.
commercial, right? So
Yep.
even though you can do it, they don't. It's a little bit of a tricky area. So, but
Yep.
the thing is, with exclusivity, like if you got a Ford commercial that's running all the time and you can't do the Infinity commercial, you're not really complaining too much because you're
Right.
making money from the
You're making
Ford
the money off the
commercial.
Ford
So
commercial. Yeah.
you know,
What about one aspect of business we mentioned but haven't dove into or diving into, would be the voiceover world, right? So,
hmm
in terms of, I saw that you did Grand Theft Auto, right? So it's kind of like even in the voiceover world, have you explored different aspects? Have you looked at, of course, commercial voiceovers? You could do games. There's audiobooks. Like, have you looked at those different aspects, or how have you explored those sort of different? When you're like, I'll do a
uh,
voiceover too.
I didn't do voiceovers for forever. And I like literally, this is going to sound crazy. I was at my old agency. It was the same agent, my old agency. And the head of that agency, I had booked like, I don't know, this is something like 5 commercials in a month or something
Uh
like
huh.
that. This was years ago when there was a lot more commercial work.
Uh huh.
And the head of that agency was like, "What? Who is this guy? Why are we not sending him out for voiceovers?" And
Uh
so then
huh.
he made the voiceover department start sending me out, and that's how I started doing voiceover. But initially I didn't do it. It was a hard world to break into. Like I
Oof.
don't know how people got into it.
Yep.
I literally had a voiceover agent. They never sent me out. Like they couldn't until the head of the agency. Like it's a very weird world, and
Yep.
I only got into it because I mean it was luck, I guess. And then
Yep.
I started to book some commercial voiceovers, And then, then you start going out for animated series, and
Uh-huh.
which are harder now because there are mostly celebrities that do it,
Uh-huh.
but still some. And then, things like Grand Theft Auto video game world and stuff like that. I just did an audition for a video game, for a new video game this morning. So,
Mhm.
and those are fun. They're really character driven. So like that's super fun.
Right,
Like,
it's almost more like a play than some
oh
of these
yeah,
other things that you get to really get to
yeah.
act. I guess so. Sort of stepping back, like, do you feel like all the different things that we're talking about? How do those inform each other? Do you feel like at times it kind of you feel spread thin of like, oh God, I'm doing a voiceover in the morning, and then I'm a commercial, and then I've got a play audition, and then like, how do those sort of different paths either support or sort of pull from each other? Do you feel like it's one or the other? Does it sometimes one, sometimes not, in terms of how they inform and lift each other up?
Um, I don't know. Ask me that question again.
Well,
Sorry.
just mean like given that you're doing so many different things, obviously you're not doing all of it at once, not necessarily in the
Yeah.
same day. Are you doing a TV show audition and a commercial and a voiceover? But like, just I guess have they felt like they are um, the sum of the parts is lifting each other up in terms of, hey, this is informing each other, or do you feel like sometimes you're like, I'm focusing so much on this, I'm neglecting this. I actually think I could really great at audiobooks, but I'm not spending any time on that. I'm spending all my time on commercials, or I
Yeah.
want to book this
I
play,
think
but
that's
I'm thinking
def
about this. Like,
I think that's constantly a balancing act where you're like, you kind of ignore one aspect of your career and stuff like that. Like I don't do audiobooks. I'd love to do audiobooks.
yeah,
If
somebody
anybody's,
hire Rod for an audiobook. He sounds
yeah,
great.
seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I love to read out loud. I love to hear the sound of my own voice.
Ugh,
So
you're
I'm
telling
just
me. You're telling me, Rod. Like I don't know that. Yeah.
um, no, I would love to do audiobooks. I don't. You're all constantly trying to find as many avenues as you can. But in terms of like, if I say I have a commercial audition self tape and a TV show self tape, like sometimes it used to be we don't have as many auditions as we used to. The business has shrunk a bit recently, um, and certainly in commercials there's less. There's a lot of non-union work,
Mhm.
and but I just try to focus on one thing at a time. If I
Mhm.
know that like I got this commercial thing and I want to work on that script, I work on that script when I work on that, and then I put it down and I work on the next script. And I try not to go back and forth between the two, but they do. They again, like I said, it's all acting.
Yeah.
Just the job
And
is still the same.
does it feel to you more like, hey, this is coming at me? I have a commercial audition because it came in. Like, does it feel like, hey, I'll sort of accept everything and then parse it from there? Or do you feel like something like, do you at the top of the year be like, this is the year I'm booking a TV show. This is the year I'm doing lots of commercial. Like, do you feel like you're setting that intention of focus of the path, or is it like, I'm gonna keep throwing paint against the wall, and what sticks is great. The job's the job. I'll go where it goes.
Yeah, I'm not. I think I probably should be better at throwing a little more intention into my year, but that's never how I've really worked. I'm not a
Yeah, this was
real.
mostly a note, Rod. I was just trying to give you some notes about your
Yeah, it's
career.
good. No, I,
Thank
I
you.
I really
Yeah.
should.
The learning is for you, actually.
I think I've worked at a certain point in my career. I realized that all of my panic about never working again, because you do, as soon as you finish a job, you think you're
For
never going to
sure.
work again. And I realized that all of that I had consistently worked with that feeling
Yep.
for 20 some years, and that I was always something always came along. So I learned to just sit back and relax a little bit and be
And
like,
yet
okay,
someday it will be true. There will be a day
yeah,
you never work again. That's just
yes, no,
it will
it's
be a
true.
last time you pick up your daughter. It is true.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's I just have tried to relax into that a little bit to be like, okay, something's coming,
Yep.
whether I don't know what it is yet. And that can be hard sometimes. I'm glad I've had a successful career. And looking back, if you had told me this had been what my career was when I got out of school, I had been thrilled.
Yep.
But, but it doesn't mean it's not difficult at times.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. I sometimes don't know when my next job is going to come, when my next audition is going to come. And,
Yep.
you have to, there's a little bit of zen in that. Like you can muscle it, you can try to force it, and you can try to do all the things you can do. But at some point, you just kind of have to be like, okay, I have to let the universe work its magic now.
Surprisingly wise, Rod. I would not have expected such
No, I
Zen
wouldn't.
spirituality from you. That's
Yes,
not this
seriously.
is not who he is on the baseball field,
No,
folks. I don't know
definitely
what
not.
we're
I'm
talking
much,
about.
much, much less zen on the baseball field.
Much less, man. There's a lot of shouting, there's
A lot of
aggression.
yelling.
But
Yep.
I actually, and I didn't put this down as a question, but do you find that to be true? I really find for myself, like people are shocked when they encounter me on a sports in a sports world and then also an artistic world. Like, do you find like you have almost two completely different personalities in the different
Yeah.
mediums? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I bring, like, when I work on a play, I think I bring in the same kind of intensity to the
Yeah.
work, but I'm certainly not like, you know,
Shouting at the
as
umps.
aggressive
Yeah.
as I am on the baseball field. I'm very, but there are things that are similar. I mean, there's a competitiveness that both
Yep.
you and I have on the sports fields that we both bring to the business. You know
Yep.
what I mean? You have to be competitive. Like, there are there are a lot of actors out there.
Yep.
So,
I've
but
often found that like it, especially if you have that gene, and not everybody does. Not everybody has, I think, our level of um, intensity from a competition perspective. But I often found like I'll recommend to people who have that. I'm like, you have to find an avenue to let some of that out
yeah,
because it's some of that is not productive in a rehearsal room. Like
absolutely.
like
Oh,
during
definitely.
COVID when I was not playing as much sports, I was like, I feel my body like being pent up with a kind of energy that I need to release. I need to like go bang bodies with something. I literally made Elizabeth go play basketball with me. I was like, I need
Right.
somebody to play a
Yeah.
sport with me, not like like I need some of that, and because it weaves its way into your teaching. Like I'm a very different teacher than I am a sports player, but if I never release any of that energy, it builds up. I'm like, I need somewhere to do that.
And one thing about competition, like, and competition is mostly with yourself, I think. Like, to striving to be the best that you could be each time. Because
Yep,
the truth is, you gotta, in both the rehearsal room, the audition room, the baseball diamond, the basketball court, you got to lift your teammates up. You got to
absolutely.
make your teammates better.
Yep,
So you got to, the rehearsal room is about making everyone else around you great,
yep. In
not
fact,
about you, not about making you great.
yeah, if that competitive energy leaks beyond yourself, beyond just self improvement, it is counterproductive on all those
Yep.
fields. Especially true in like an artistic room, especially if it's like, oof, you're trying to cut down a different classmate. But that's true, of course, of a teammate too. If you're just
Yep.
like talking crap about a teammate who's making errors, I'm like, that brings the whole team down. That's not helping. Yeah.
Yeah. What's yeah, I'll never forget this. I got this with one of the um first shows I did, the first off Broadway play I did in New York. Can't remember who it was. I think who's the girl that's on, the woman that's on Elspeth? Carrie Preston, is that who it is?
Don't ask me to get a name, but I know who you mean.
Anyway,
Elspeth Taccioni. Yeah.
no, she was on good. What was that? Oh gosh, I can't remember. She's lovely, great
Yeah.
actor. She was auditioning. I was a reader. That was another big thing I did when I got out of school. I forgot
Hmm.
to. I was a reader for cast directors for a lot of auditions. I used to be like, I read for Bernie Telsey for a long
Hmm.
time, and that's how I started. That's how I got into a lot of places, was by being a
Hmm.
reader. Anyway, I was a reader for audition, and this actress came in and she read with me, and she was about to walk out the role. When she was established theater actor, she turned around and she turned to the director and the catcher, and she said, "Is he playing this role?" And they were like, no. And she was like, "He should be."
Aw,
And
how's Beth?
I was really um, touched by how I learned a lot about how selfless that was. It was her
Hmm.
audition, but she was putting her attention on me,
Yep.
because that's what good actors do.
And also
And
made
I
her look
learned,
good. I'm sure she looked good in the room being
she
like,
did, and she
give him
got
a
the role.
compliment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not
Yep.
get the role, but I wasn't auditioning. But but they brought me. But they then brought me back for the show that I ended up doing.
That's so
So
cool. That's a great story.
I
Carrie
really,
Preston is her name. Carrie
Carrie Preston.
Preston. You look
Yes,
it up.
Carrie
Yeah.
Preston.
Yep. I was trying to say
Um,
her last name from the Elizabeth Tassione from the
yes,
Good Wife. Yeah.
I've. It's funny. I've never met her since. I've never run into her since.
Ah,
Like, we've crossed circles, and I've always wanted to tell her the story. So,
well, actually, if you open your door right behind you, Rod, Carrie
oh
Preston is standing there ready.
wow,
This is the
this is a
moment. Now it's
great
gonna.
podcast.
This
Wow.
is really. We have a big budget, bigger budget than you would have realized. No, let's move toward wrapping up here. And
Yeah.
we like to wrap each episode with just a little bit of advice. Maybe especially if we're holding on to this framing device, and I've been white knuckling it the whole time, of like a young artist who maybe wants to have the kind of wide ranging career. Maybe there's someone who didn't graduate saying, I definitely want to Shakespeare. Maybe there's someone who I hear this all the time from our students. So they go, I want to work in everything. And sometimes I want to be like, do you know what that means to work in it? Like, that's a lot. Like, they're like, I want to do commercials. I want to do TV film. I want to do voiceovers. I want to do video games. I want to, like, for people who have that desire, if they're 17, 18, 21, listening to this now, like, what advice would you have in terms of how they can hope to have that kind of career?
I think it's great that they want to do it, that to want to do everything. And I think the main advice I have is something that I said before, is that to treat each thing as important as the next.
Mm,
So nothing is more, one's not more important. You're going to have things that you think are bigger auditions and things that you think are smaller auditions, and the your job is to do excellent work in every
Hmm.
single aspect of it, at every audition, and to be nice. Like that's really, to be kind to yourself and to the other people around you. So, but in terms of doing all, I think it's good to be as well rounded. Like if you uh, aren't booking a lot of TV and you don't have a lot of experience in the camera, to take an on-camera class, to learn some
Hmm.
on-camera technique, to learn, like the things that you don't know how to do. So if there's an area of the business you want to be in, to learn how to do that is really great, because I think the only way to really uh, have a long-term career outside of being a mega star is to
Hmm.
just it is to have fun doing as much as you can and being willing to do as much as you can. Do the readings, do the, to be a reader, do the commercial auditions,
Yep.
do a voiceover, do it. You have to just do everything there.
Yeah. The more
Um,
eggs the more baskets you have eggs in, the more possibilities in terms of going, I
yeah.
got this is an option, this is an option. Yeah, totally. Rod, this was just so fun. Thanks for doing this,
Yeah,
man. I
man.
was so good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You too.